You're listening to Unfinished Minds,
a podcast about learning, teaching, and staying curious in a messy, ever-changing world.
We're Amy and Ben, partners in life and in business. We've spent the last 20 years exploring what it means to learn on purpose, whether in classrooms, in companies, or in parenting.
Each week, we pick a big question and have an honest conversation about how people grow, what it means to teach well, and why learning still matters, especially when the world feels uncertain.
Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a leader, or just a curious soul, we're glad you're here. All right.
What are we here to talk about today?
Okay. I want to talk about what it means to actually teach something on purpose, and whether all this teaching and learning business is accidental and just something that happens, or whether it's something we can kind of grab hold of and, make go the way we need it to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds timely.
Yes, it does. Anything that involves empowerment, right? My background is philosophy. One of the really cool things that I studied as a philosopher was education. So all aspects of teaching and learning and what it means. And a question that comes up a lot, and this is what I want to focus on today, is do we teach and learn by accident, or is it something we can do with intention and purpose?
So can I posit a guess that it's a little of both?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Just to speak from my own experience, and this is a little bit of our origin story too, as a company and as people, is that I grew up in a teaching family. Everyone in my family teaches something at some point. So it was always on the table. It was always a topic of discussion. Learning was sort of a focal point in our life as a family. And it informed my own time as a learner, of course. I grew up thinking that being a student and doing well at school and being curious and disciplined in it was really important. But it also informed a lot of my time in the classroom. And over the span of decades, I taught every subject area, mostly focusing on humanities, but I taught it to a whole lot of different learners and a lot of different age ranges. And some, but not all of my teaching gigs over the years were kind of things that I just happened upon. Pretty much every subject area out there, including math. Yeah. And geography. I wasn't expecting that, but I taught geography once. So, and that was great. And, there was intention in that, maybe not in me sort of stumbling into those teaching positions, but in the actual teaching practice. I paid attention to the how and the why and, who was in front of me. But I have to say the most invested, the most deliberate that I've ever been as an educator was when we started the business. And I started to really flip over rocks and ask in general, why do we teach things the way we teach things? And how do people learn in general? Philosophers always ask why. So when I was in front of students, yes, of course, I asked why I was doing what I was doing. But I had space as an entrepreneur in the education space. And it gave me time to sort of take a breath and look at why I was doing things the way I was doing and how I wanted to do them for other people, for our clients, for our end learners.
Yeah, I can relate. Obviously, I also come from a family of teachers, but for me, it wasn't the first stop in my career. I started off as that member of the family that didn't go into the family business, and I became a techie. I became a programmer for a long time.
Just when I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah, I seem to quote The Godfather a lot when I talk about that transition. But I got into the classroom because I wanted a change in lifestyle. I wanted a different pace to my work. Not like teaching is easy, but you can say that there's a lot less travel and the hours are much more consistent. In that transition, I really quickly found that what I enjoyed the most was the impact I was having on the learners, on the students. There was an obvious ripple effect that really good learning had in a group. The goal to, well, maybe we can apply that to an industry as well. And it's funny, our story together coming into the business world as entrepreneurs, I think we both had that on our mind. Our company's called Enable Education. So, and Enable wasn't chosen lightly. I think we both came into the business world as entrepreneurs with the goal of having impact on our minds. With that intentionality around trying to innovate to create really great stuff, whether that stuff is content or technology or whatever. But I'll resist the urge to get all marketing-y up in here.
Yeah, yeah. And also resist the urge to psychoanalyze whether both of us coming from teaching families is what brought us together. If it's been common ground in our relationship too. I don't even know if we have
Oh
time to
boy.
go there.
Oh boy, is that what this podcast is about?
I hope not.
I don't know that anyone needs that.
No. This is what happens though. Yeah. You have
Yeah.
to if you are a teaching family, you can bear this in mind. This is what
Yeah.
happens to your children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I wanted to ask today as our central question, and as I said, philosophers ask a lot of questions about why and how things work. I wanted to look at that and maybe pose that to you, but also our listeners. Can we teach and learn by accident, or is it a very deliberate thing, or should it be a very deliberate thing? And why should it be a very deliberate thing? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about little baby animals,
Uh,
little baby birds in the nest, and teeny tiny little predators, little fluffy things with big teeth. There's been all
okay,
kinds
I'm
of
I'm picturing that. No, I'm back with you.
yeah,
Okay, carry on.
okay. So over decades, maybe centuries, we humans have watched these teeny tiny little birds and teeny tiny little pointy toothed predators and tried to figure out when they learn to do stuff, when they learn to fly, when they learn to go get other things and tear them apart. Is that kind of something they're born knowing how to do? And if not, how did their older animals, how do their parents or other animals in the pack teach them to do that? Is it deliberate? And what kind of techniques do they use? And I'm not an animal expert, so I can't offer a definitive answer about that. But I sometimes wonder, to
The
what
same
extent,
question about people.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
do we teach and learn by accident, or is there method in our madness when we teach and learn? And should there be more intentionality if there isn't enough? So I'm going to put that on the table.
Well, that feels like a leading question, but I like it, and I think it's at the heart of the way we think about a lot of things a lot of the time. And I too am no entomologist, and so I'm not going to comment on what is instinct and what is innate and how animals learn. But I feel very strongly that you can watch kids watch parents, and you can watch kids watch other kids. And there certainly is value in mimicry. There certainly is value in building a model of the world that is driven by inputs. And I think that's, again, as neither an entomologist nor a humanologist, I'm not going to speak to the mechanism of this. But I've seen what happens. I think we've seen what happens when teaching or training isn't intentional. And there's just this idea of a subject matter expert shows up and
Mhm.
she or he gets in front of a crowd, starts waving their hands around with passion and excitement, and talking a lot about their experience, about technical concepts. And it can help, it can go really far with a great subject matter expert. That passion can be transferred, that excitement can be transferred, the stories can be transferred. But without intentionality, my experience, I won't speak for you, my experience is the technical stuff, the complicated stuff, the stuff that needs to be scaffolded. In other words, you got to learn A before you get to B. You really got to get them before C will make any sense. That always requires intentionality. And when that doesn't happen, I mean, I hate to say it, that's what our kids might describe as a bad teacher, someone who has a lot to learn about an approach that can bring everyone along with them.
It's kind of busy work, isn't it? That's when you get into the I'm doing this and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, in math education might be referred to as like drill and kill.
Mm,
Here's your worksheet. Do your worksheet. And what do you mean you don't understand? I there's 5 examples there. Just do the worksheet. And I don't want to simplify this to just be about elementary or secondary math. But your question about intentionality, I think it's a complicated answer. I believe that you always must have intentionality if you're going to be creating a learning experience that a lot of people have to learn from, right?
Mhm.
And if you've got a small group, maybe they're your peers, or maybe they're people who are there to passively observe something that they want more of a TED talk than they want a lesson or a lecture, then I think you can absolutely show up, tell some stories, share some passion, and people will get something from it.
Mm.
But in that case, the educational objective is different than having to follow a curriculum to achieve a certain skill set.
Mm.
I feel like I cheated by saying the answer is yes and to both, but that's the way I think about it. And to
And
put a fine point on part of it, very slow, thoughtful, methodical, pedagogical approaches where everything is scaffolded and carefully crafted, it can be boring as hell.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
there's I'm looking for the fun in that. I'm looking
Right.
for the joy of learning in that. Um,
Okay, well, I have a question for you that I'm going to turn around then. Can you, I'm thinking of Weird Al, mandatory fun. Like, can you plan for fun?
I think you can make space for it.
Mm,
I'm thinking of parents with their children, but also just informal learning myself as an adult. There are times when I take courses, or there are times when I sit down with a series of videos and I'm like, I'm going to teach myself how to do this, or I'm going to learn from whoever is putting this out. But there are also times where I'm kind of like, I'm just going to set myself up so that there's stuff to learn that's kind of cool, that's going to be interesting, and I'm creating the environment, I'm creating the pasture, but I haven't got the sheepdog out yet, chasing chasing all the sheep in the right direction. So I think there's value in having something very scaffolded and very planned out and lots of objectives picked out in advance. But I think you can be deliberate in how you set yourself up for a more informal learning experience too. I'm thinking of an example, you take the kid to the zoo, right? There's lots of stuff to learn at the zoo, and you can let them run wild a little bit and go, okay, I'm really interested in spider monkeys. I'm really interested in alligators. And the learning's going to happen. And that's deliberate. You've put them in a spot where there's lots to learn, and it doesn't really matter in what order or how they pick it up as long as they're there. And I think you can do that for yourself as an adult too. You can put yourself in a situation where learning's going to happen, and that part is intentional, but you don't have to have the, okay, we're going to do this X, Y, Z. There's my Canadian coming out. X, Y, Z, and we're going to assess it like this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. So there can be a little bit of chaos within the structure too. There can be a little bit of loosey goosiness within all the intentionality too. So I intend to learn something, and I'm going to put myself in a spot where it's going to happen, but I'm not gonna break it down into steps, or I'm not going to micromanage myself as a learner like that. Does that answer your question?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What about just the intention to learn? Have we sort of put that on the back burner? And let me explain what I mean by
Mm.
that. Being active learners and wanting to know more and wanting to ask questions and wanting to experiment and play with stuff, it's not always encouraged right now in the world. We're not we're
Okay.
not really in global
Here we are
circumstances
in
where
March 2025, and
y-
you're
yeah.
being cagely direct about the geopolitical situation
Yes, yeah. I
in North
don't I don't
America.
know that learning is a priority at the moment. In fact, I think it's actively discouraged by some. And I think maybe we need more intentionality to actually keep learning, and to not let that fall behind. And maybe that intention all by itself is enough right now, that we sort of make this decision and make this plan that we're going to be lifelong learners no matter what, even if we're told not to. And that might be really important, more than ever before.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you say we, you just mean everybody,
Yes.
right? In all
Yep.
contexts.
Yep.
I was asked recently in a little interview about what is the most important thing a small business can do in times of uncertainty. And my belief is that having a culture of learning for the business and for the individuals is so critical. You got to pivot.
Hmm.
And if you have a team, or you are the kind of leader who gets immensely uncomfortable and maybe locked up when things change out from under you, you're at a disadvantage in times of uncertainty and change. And we are in times of uncertainty and change.
Hmm.
And there are ways, and this is not in the scope of this conversation, but I think it's adjacent to it. Like having intentionality into the way that you think about your learning culture as a business leads to a natural selection of teammates, either how you recruit them or who stays around, who love that, who are lifelong learners, who thrive on a new cool tool or process. And turn the lens directly at businesses. I think that's incredibly important and can be a massive advantage. And I think that's true for small business and mid-sized business. I think for large business, it's so much harder to maintain that across an organization. But you can do it.
I think that rings true in all kinds of other spheres too. I mean, as a parent,
Mm.
I kind of see we have a teenager, and one of the most important things, after shelter and love and food and health care is just
Your
this.
Canadian's showing again.
Yeah, there you go. Is this reinforcement that you deserve to be allowed to learn. It's a survival skill right now. This will help you adapt to the world in uncertain times, and I'm suspecting that uncertain times will not be certain anytime soon.
I'm
It's
parsing that. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
with you.
it's a there you go. No, you're a double negative. I think it's a suit of armor. I think it's food. I think it's sustenance. To have it reinforced that you are on this planet as many things, but you are also on this planet as a learner. That's who you are. And just to go back to the animal kingdom, I think it could be true for many other species, but I think it is definitely true for humans that part of who we are is that we teach and learn. That's what makes us human. A big part of it is that there's this constant drive to know more, to do more, to make more, to be more.
Well, it's how we won Earth.
That's how we won Earth. Yeah. Oh, I hope we don't lose it. Hopefully we can learn how to not
This
lose
is
it.
this is not a pessimistic podcast.
It could be a realistic podcast, though. It could be this is how we turn things around.
This is hopeful.
Yeah, this is how we
And
march
this
forward.
actually feels like a really good opportunity to bring it back around. I think we've talked about teachers, we've talked about parents, we've talked about business owners, we've talked about the experience for learners. It's not just knowledge that's power.
It's learning that's power.
That's right.
It's thinking that's power. Yeah. And don't you want to feel like you still have a little bit of power in your life amidst everything that's up in the air and scary and uncertainty? Isn't it nice to have that under your feet and to feel secure in that no matter what else, I am a learner and I can know more.
There are forces in this world that would love it if everyone just shut up and did what they were told.
Yeah.
Understanding how and, as you said, why we learn, I think it's a way to stay afloat.
Yeah. A way to keep your wits about you, a way to feel like yourself.
Thanks for learning with us.
If today's conversation sparked something for you, share it with someone you care about or someone you're still figuring things out with.
You can find us online or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget,
we are all unfinished minds. Let's keep learning.